So the DP retains a majority in the National Assembly. Now, what does this indicate for the next 4 years? We're joined by Professor Min Jeong-hun this morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
So let's start with the voter turnout, which came to 67%. What's your take on this?
Well, as you mentioned, the turnout of this general election is 16%. And generally speaking, the voter turnout of the general election in South Korea is a little bit lower than that of the president elections.
Right.
For example, the turnout of the president election in 2022 was the 77.1%. So we can see that the voter turnout in general elections is about the 10% difference, or the lower than the president elections in recent years. Anyway, the voter turnout of the general election this time is the highest general election turnout since 1992, and it's higher than the 4 years ago by 0.8%. And as you mentioned in the briefing, the turnout of the early voting this time is 31.3%, and it's 4.6% higher than the 4 years ago. So it seems that the increase of the early voting mainly contributed to the higher voter turnout of this general election. And higher voter turnout this time reflects that South Korean voters got higher interest getting involved in the national politics this time.
Definitely. Then we now have to talk about the election results. What are you reading into this resounding victory that the South Korean people handed to the DP?
Well, the outcome of the general election shows that South Korean voters supported the opposition parties much more than ruling party. And the main opposition Democratic Party will take the 174 out of the 300 seats in total, while the ruling party will just take the 109 out of 300 seats. And more importantly, the opposition bloc will take 188 out of the 300 seats, and which included the Rebuilding Korea Party, whose leader is Jo-guk, the former Secretary of the Justice Department in the previous administration. And the party is expected to receive 12 the proportional seats. So it shows that this general election is a typical of the midterm elections, which is held in the middle of the current administration, and its main feature is voters' assessments of the current administration and the ruling party. So the outcome of this general election suggests that South Korean people did not like the past performance of the current administration and the ruling party, and sent a strong signal to the presidential office and the ruling party that it needed to take more care of what South Korean people want,
right,
and to do better for the rest of its terms.
Definitely. Now, analyzing the results, let's dissect it by region. Now, any regions or areas of the country that surprised you personally?
Well, we need to take care of, pay attention to the results of the Seoul and the Gyeonggi province metropolitan areas, and also the Daejeon and Chungcheong,
right,
the provinces. Because first, it has been known that Seoul and Gyeonggi province, which over half of the total voters in the country live in, have had significant impacts on the overall outcome of the South Korean general elections. And that trend is also applied to the results of this general election. And the main opposition party received much more votes than the ruling party in Seoul and Gyeonggi province this time too. And along with the vote decisions in the Seoul and Gyeonggi province, it is also important to consider, as you mentioned, the vote decisions in the Daejeon and Chungcheong, which are located in the middle of the country. And they have been considered as the casting votes in national elections in South Korea. And their votes show well how South Korean voters perceive the national conditions of the election. And this time, in most congressional districts in the region, the main opposition party, Democratic Party candidates, defeated their opponents, ruling party candidates. So, and it is also contributed to the victory of the opposition party this time.
Professor Min, then I have to ask you, how will or what the election results, what kind of changes will bring to the state affairs, especially for the Yoon administration?
Well, basically, in terms of the victory of the opposition party, it could be more challenging for the current administration to implement domestic politics. And the opposition Democratic Party will have bigger voice in implementing domestic policies based on the victory of this general election. It means that it would be harder for the current administration and ruling party to pass legislations in the National Assembly because the opposition bloc has got the supermajority in Congress. So we may see the more situations that the ruling party and opposition parties will make negotiations to pass legislations, but the lead will be taken by the opposition party. It means that the National Assembly will be dominated by the opposition bloc for the upcoming 4 years.
So we should expect more talks and negotiations between the two. Yes. Now, what are some immediate economic policy measures that we should expect the DP to press ahead with now that they've won?
Well, basically, the economic policies are mainly implemented by the executive branch, like the presidential office and the financial departments, not by the National Assembly. So I don't think that there will be the significant or the immediate economic policy shifts or changes in the coming months. Instead, the current administration will maintain the economic policy orientations for the rest of the year. But when the executive branch and the National Assembly will talk about economic policies the next year in terms of negotiating the national budget, then we may see the progressive policies could be considered. But it's not clear at this point how much they are willing to negotiate and cooperate to pass legislations next year, because they will be the political disputes and the conflicts between the two major parties.
Definitely. Professor Min, before I let you go briefly, what about on the diplomatic front? Will there be a major shift in policy directions?
Well, like the economic policies, I don't think that there will be a major shift in the diplomatic policies directions in the coming years, because like the economic policies, diplomacy and foreign policies will mainly be made and implemented by the executive branch, like the presidential office and Department of Foreign Affairs. And the public opinion polls have shown that foreign policy is one of the areas that the current administration is particularly assessed by the public, South Korean, the public. So there will be a little change in terms of the implementing foreign policy, and foreign elections in the coming years. So the current administration will maintain its foreign policy directions, like the strengthening the ROK-US alliance, the improving trilateral cooperation among South Korea, US, and Japan, and the enhancing cooperation with the like-minded countries like the European nations, European unions, Canada, and Australia, something like that.
Right, they should be more on the same page on that in the field of diplomacy.
Yeah.
All right, Professor Min, thank you so much for your insights this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.